some light. It was called Clipperton, the amateur radio hardstock island. I quote some sentences. San Francisco. Golden Gate Bridge. And after a quick stop in San Francisco, to LA, to Pasadena, you see the mess in the hotel room, trying to gather all the equipment and leave behind everything which we did not need on the island itself. The flight was about 36 hours. I don't know how they scheduled my flight, but it was about 36 hours till I came in there. And finally, we could see California for the first sunrise. Pasadena.
Sunny and continuing warm today with highs in the upper 70s to the mid-80s. Currently in Burbank it's 64 degrees, 58 at LA Airport, it's 61 at El Toro, and it's 60 at the LA Civic Center. And that's KCLA News. I'm Bill Tendrich. And now more of your Thursday morning Ken Cooper Show with three great country favorites in a row on 93.9 KCLA.
The first morning I made contact through the local repeater with Jay, WA285J, the leader of the expedition. And I drove over to his place, close to Pasadena, in Rancho Cucamonga. This is how the weather looked like. It was quite a change coming from cold and windy Belgium, as the song said, to warm. It was about 25 degrees in California at that time. Rancho Cucamonga. And there is the boss, JW285J, as usual, on the phone. He made the error of publishing his telephone number in many DX news sheets while looking for operators, so he was receiving calls like full time. In between the calls we could have a very quick chat. Together with Jay we drove over to Charlie in 7QQ, the QSL manager of the expedition. And the next day I drove over to LA, downtown LA, to pick up our, as they called him, the Dutch boy. That's what Larry was called during the whole expedition. Wooden shoes or Dutch boy. Downtown LA, and there he was. A funny quote was, I had made a big sign saying FO0CI, and I had quickly seen a picture of Ari, so I knew what he looked like. And I was holding this sign very high up. Ari was standing right in front of me, still didn't see the sign. We drove around in California because we had about 2 days to wait before the rest of the crew arrived. California is a funny place. You drive in the desert. 1 hour later you're in the snow in the mountains. This is the Valley of LA. LA again with the sea, very far away. Even an hour's drive from the desert, in the mountains people were skiing. It's very fun. And again an hour's drive further away, over the mountain, we had the desert again. It's very funny, it's a climate we don't know over here in Belgium. In the desert. This is about a 1.5 hour drive from the snow. So you can see people driving through the desert with skis on the back of the car. Very funny. The evening before we left, we went to the guy on the left of this picture, KL7GRF/6, who furnished us with the satellite equipment. As you probably know, Ari was responsible for satellite and 6 meter, so we got the equipment from this guy. So we picked up the equipment just about the evening before we left. Ari was quickly briefed again on Oscar 13 and Oscar 10. You see on the left-hand side, included success, huh? On the left you see Ron, WA6FGV, then Ari, then Jay, and then Vincent. The evening before we left was hectic. Everybody was packing and unpacking. I think we made sure that Jay's wife had quite a lot of grey hair after the crazy European gang left. That's the next morning. That's the morning we left to San Diego, to the harbor. Loading the personal stuff. The main equipment, the antennas and the towers, were already loaded on the boat the week before, so it was just personal stuff and some very, very last parts of the equipment, such as satellite and 6-meter equipment, but all the rest was already on the boat. You see a new guy on the right-hand side with the green t-shirt, that's Mike, N9NS, and the one with the hat is N0AFW. As Alain at 6BFH had warned us, we should carry guns. We had guns with us. So there you see one of them being loaded in the truck. We were warned for pirates and whatever could happen on the island, so we had to foresee everything. So there's the whole crew except one. One had already looked like. There she is, the Spirit. The Spirit is a sport fishing boat, normally chartered by nature freaks or sport fishermen. She's about 30 meters long by 8 meters. Has 3 diesel engines of 350 horsepower, so that's more than 1,000 horsepower. Uploading the last bits of personal stuff. This is Ari carrying the satellite antennas. Mike, Vincent. It's just, I always wondered, what were you carrying in a bag? Your garbage? You took your garbage with you? Jay? And everything, the last bits of the stuff was loaded on the boat. So I get an impression of the height of the boat.
We're going from this island where there's nothing, nobody, through Cabo. Cabo doesn't have a place for social stuff.
These are some comments I recorded on the boat. So the last bits of beer, you know that drinking on the island was very important not to dry out, so we had loads of beer and soda with us.
That's it?
6 meters, I guess.
This is when the recording you hear now
Icon. Is that a Yahoo or an Icon?
was recorded. But when all the equipment was registered to the customs, the girl on the right is the customs girl from the States. The man standing in the behind is the captain, Captain Mike.
Oh, better safe than sorry. No big deal. We have, I got a 747 tucked away in one small box. Thank you. Gotcha.
Time to get the women off boat.
What do you got?
And time for our first stop. We weren't gone yet.
40S. Serial number?
What the people did, the crew, they wanted to fish while we were on the island, so they were getting in some live bait. So live bait is fish, mainly sardines. which they kept in like large aquariums in the boat, so they could fish with live bait. And this is a pelican trying to get one of the baits. And away we are.
Take me away!
Don't take the car with you!
My finger, full speed ahead!
We still have to get used to the noise of the boat, as you can hear. Many people say that the expedition was a success due to this little thing. What is that? That's a seal, a seahund. The seal was guiding us out of the harbor. And Captain Mike said that was a token of good luck. Then at that moment he knew that the expedition would be a success. And there we are. San Diego Harbor. The naval station in San Diego. Some more ships, submarine. And we're gone. San Diego seen from the sea. This was a time when Jay said, as you heard on the tape recording, what have we done? The buffet, the first food, while we were still able to eat the first food on the boat. This is the inside of the boat, the dining room. This is a picture, you cannot see it very well. These are the towers, the tables, the chairs, which were loaded the week before. Towers and antennas again. The generators and the boxes, the cases in which the generators were placed while landing. The aluminium skiffs we used to land and to get off the island. These were 4 of the 6 outboard motors we had for the skiffs. You see that people there are putting some of the food in the fridges. These are huge fridges close to the engine room. Normally used to store fish, but because this was a very long trip, they took extra food on board. So they just put our food where normally the fish was supposed to be. On the left-hand side, you see these huge reservoirs, which were filled with 1,400 liters of fuel needed for the generators while we were on the island. The boat could house about 30 passengers, but most of the cabins were full of equipment. As you see here, coax, all bits and pieces, bags, beer and beer and beer. I think we drank about, or was it 20 cases of beer while on the island. Cases and boxes and bags and whatever. Transceivers. This is the steering cabin with Captain Mike. The boat was fully equipped. It was equipped with satellite navigation. So what the captain did is he locked the automatic pilot on the west side of Riviera-Gigedo, except 0, and he didn't have to do anything. So the satellite navigator was linked to the automatic pilot, and he didn't touch the steering at all. Once we were past Riviera-Gigedo, he locked it up Clipperton, and again he didn't have to do anything. So they were on the bridge, just standing and looking if nothing special happened. This is again a view of the steering cabin. On the right-hand side, we have the computer for the weather facts. Left of it, you see the satellite equipment, satellite navigation equipment. Then again left away the radar, underneath it the sonar, one of the many sonar installations, the steering wheel and the automatic pilot on the left, and then there were loads of transceivers and VHF and HF equipment on the back of the steering head. They asked me to bring a small flag of Belgium with me, so the first thing they asked me is, Peter, where's your flag? Well, there it is. A few hours out of the harbor of San Diego, we put up the vertical which we used during the whole boat trip. So a few hours out of the harbor of San Diego, we made our first QSO. With the normal QRM mission over here. We will hear that QRM probably for another 3 weeks.
Alright, Al, we got some guy called CQ right on it. 73s. Take it easy. Put it on the flush with no problem. You came to that page. Runway 7, Queen Queen. Maritime Mobile Beach 2. The QRP station.
On the back of the boat, we didn't have much to do really on the boat. It's eat, drink, sleep and operate. So most of the time we spend on the back of the boat just chatting along. So left again Vincent and Charlie, Pete and Jay.
Mr. Clipperton, what do you think of this expedition?
I think it's wonderful. What do you want me to say?
Mr. Meyer, what do you think of this expedition? Mr. Meyer, what do you think of this expedition? This is the most exciting time of my entire life.
And he is the king.
I am the king. I must emphasize that
This is the guy, the second guy from the right.
And I so look forward to working the radio amateurs in the world to impart my wisdom, my culture, my youth, my vim and vigor just to make sure that everybody has a QSO from the prestigious island of Clipperton. And God bless America, God bless George Bush. Mr. Clipperton, do you want to add something to this?
No, nothing else. Just QRZ.
Just QRZ. In the morning I was wakened up by people shooting, so what they were doing, typical American, with a riot gun they were shooting clay pigeons. Is there an American in the public? ON6TT? This is our full station, so we were running with on the boat with the 950, with a Dentron 3 kilowatt linear, with some RTTY equipment. I hope you had a good signal from the boat, because we couldn't do much better. A few days later we pulled up with the RTTY equipment. Radiometers and the nature. And together with Ari, we put up what we thought would be an inverted V for 6 meters. So we started, and the SWR wasn't really well. But the legs of the antenna looked pretty long to us, so we started cutting off edges. So we were left with about a third of the original antenna. What we found out afterwards that we put up the inverted V for 10 meters, for 6 meters. So we cut up about 2/3 of the antenna. But anyway, it worked. We made how many Qs from the bottom 6 meter line? 12 QSOs. But anyway, it was worth trying. It motivated people. On the way to the island, you see this dark spot on the sea. This was a whole troop of dolphins, hundreds of dolphins, swimming in front of us, and really in front of the boat, close to the boat. It's very much, if people remember the video from the 1978 expedition, they had videos showing the dolphins really swimming in front of the boat. Seems to be a game. You remember that, Alain? That doesn't look much. There are 2 dark spots in the middle of the sea there. Just to tell you, this is a whale getting a breathe. Doesn't look much like a whale, but believe me, it's a whale. One of the islands of Mexico, off the coast of Mexico. When I'm showing the slides to people who don't know radio amateurism, they immediately ask me, was this your island you went to? With a church on it? Then the weather started to get rough. About 3 days when we left San Diego, the sea really began to get rough. So this is how Pete looked the first days. This is how it looked like when it was rough.
Volgens onze magen is het toch niet zo heel rustig. Het gaat heel serieus weg en weer. Het is alsof dat we al 6 dagen op de roesbank zitten. We zijn veel met de koppen op zee. Maar normaal gezien moet het toch langzamerhand verbeteren. Volgens de kapitein, volgens het weerbericht dat de kapitein ontvangen heeft, moet het langzamerhand verbeteren. De kans dat er heel veel kinderen op het rift kunnen landen, maar het zal tamelijk lang duren om te landen. Dus ik denk niet dat we vanavond onze tijd actief gaan kunnen zijn. Waarschijnlijk gaan we vanaf morgen vroeg onze tijd, dus dat wil zeggen ongeveer binnen 24 uur actief gaan zijn, ik wist wel.
The cook didn't mind. Nobody of the crew of the Spirit was sick, and she kept on cooking, but at the end nobody was eating anymore. And it seemed like Sprite was the best remedy against seasickness, so we drank liters and liters and liters of Sprite. The day before we reached the island, the last bits of antennas were assembled. The generators were dismantled and put in the large cases. And even before we could see the islands, the dolphins, the welcome committee was there. Jumping around, you could see them from very far away. Jumping and playing, swimming in front of the boat. In big troops. And there it finally was, our island, at least for 9 days. Excitement. Our island. For the people who don't know, Clipperton is a small island, only about 3 kilometers of diameter. Most of it is water. So it has a form of a ring, rather an egg than a ring. So there's only a small bit of land on the outer side of the ring. The inner side is just lagoon, just water. It's only about maybe 3-4 meters above the ocean. As you see, a few palm trees. and the rock, Clipperton Rock. When we arrived on the island, there was a Mexican commercial fishing boat close to the island. They were not supposed to be there because they were in French territorial waters. So the moment we arrived, they took off. I don't know what they were doing, nobody knew. It seemed like they were trying to land, but they were not very successful. If you see the small boat they were trying to land on, it was more like a joke. And time to drop the anchor.
It's 20, but we're going to need a lot of scope. It's really clean.
Now this is something I want you to feel. I want you to feel the excitement. We have been planning for this expedition for months. The American crew had been planning for this expedition for really years. For years they were trying to get the license. And finally we made it. We were close to the island. Now I would like you to feel the heat. I would like you to feel the excitement. I'm going to run over these slides, which are the slides of the landing. First without comments, but feel the music. Did you feel it? Did you feel it?
Oh yeah, really.
Let's run over this again with some comments, because it was a very, very important part of our expedition, is to land safely, with equipment, with the crew, with the expeditioners, without getting everybody's feet wet. Let me run it over again.
Reflex. Slow motion.
We have been looking for a hole in the coral reef with his sonar equipment. So on the side of the island where there was no wind, the captain with his sonar equipment could find a hole in the reef. And he left one of the skiffs. We had about, 4 or 5 skiffs, ammonium metal skiffs with us. So he said, okay, drop one of the skiffs in the water and I will have a look at the hole in the coral from close by. Nobody knew if we would be able to land then or any time. So that was pretty exciting at that time. Mounting the motor. There is Captain Mike going to inspect the island. So you see where we were, for those who know Clipperton well. For those who have been there, we were landing on the west side of the island, out of the wind. You see the rock far away. See Captain Mike in far away, circling the corral. He came back and he said, okay, I found a hole, I want to mark it with buoys, like buoy. So give me a zodiac and some buoys. So done. Second boat in the water. And there they go. There they're cruising the coral again. Trying to find back the hole. On the left side of the picture here, they are attaching the buoys in the corral. In the meantime, everybody was putting all the stuff, all the gear on board. And then it was time to get on land. The first people on land were Vincent, because he was the only one of the French nationality, and Pete in 0AFW, because all of the licenses were on his name. So about an hour and a half later, it was my turn. You see, it's almost evening. The view from the ship, the Spirit anchored a few hundred meters away from the island. And then it all went very, very, very quickly. See Captain Mike in the skiff. You see the plastic garbage cans, which were sealed watertight, which holds all these small equipment, like small coax cables, meters, bulbs, whatever. Seen from the boat, the surf. Then there was one boat, one Zodiac, staying out of the surf, which was used as a lifeboat. If anything would go wrong in the corral, in the waves, then this boat would pick us up. You have to know that there are sharks circling all around. The island is very well known for its sharks. So in the water you could see all over very dark shades, which was or tuna fish or sharks. Past the lifeboat, there is the surf. We were very lucky because the weather was basically very calm. You see the hole in the reef, you see on the left and the right, you see the waves, and just where we went through, the hole in the corral. Far away you see the lifeboat. This is in the surf, and two of the crew of the boat were waiting to intercept the boat once we were through the waves. They're actually standing on the corral, they're not standing on sand or whatever, they're standing on the corral. This is in the surf again. Was through the surf, Lee, and Richard took over the boat and pulled it ashore. Also Mike jumped out of the boat. You see the wave still pounding away. You see the Spirit far away. Excuse me, Captain Mike, there is a wave coming, See the height of the waves, huh? Finally landed. This is not garbage, this is our equipment. And finally Jay had made it. It was a time when he was like almost crying, saying with his hands in his hip, this is heavy stuff, man, this is heavy stuff. Years I've waited for this is heavy stuff, man. I'm getting acquainted with the most popular inhabitants of the island, woody birds and crabs. You should just look at the youngster, the woody youngster, how it's laying there with its pads upside down with its behind. That's how we remember woodies, being like these big, unhandy, clumsy birds and the Clipperton crabs. So the first thing we did was climbing up the corral with all the equipment, so if the storm would come up, at least the equipment was a bit drier than if it would stay close to the sea. The landing continued. There were about another 4 or 5 boats landed before the evening came. So each time you see there one of the skiffs trying to land in the middle of the surf with the Spirit on the left-hand side. Again in the middle of the surf. And landing again. Both after board. Getting the equipment on top of the corral. And waiting for the next shipment. The evening indeed fell. The weather was turning bad. It was too late to get more equipment on shore. So through the VHF radio, the captain said, "Listen, I can't land more equipment and more people. There were still 2 of the operators on board of the ship, so we can't land them anymore. This will be it for today." So there we were on a deserted island. We don't know what equipment. We didn't know really what was all in all the bags. We didn't know really what to do. So we decided to make up camp close to the cocoa bush, the bougainville, and we spent the night. I suggest we make a small break of, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes, just to take the pee, and we'll continue with the second part. The first morning on the island. So we managed in the bit dark to put up a tent. We were already with 7 operators on the island. Our first sunrise on Clipperton. This was our camp the first night. 1 tent and 7 people trying to sleep in there. You see the white thing in front of the tent? That was our crab fence. We knew that the crabs were a pest on the island, so we built a crab fence to keep the crabs out. which was pretty effective, I should say. Harry, in deep thoughts, how will I get this experience in Alp? The battery of our handhelds, which we used to keep contact with the boat, ran out of power, so we had to start one of the generators just to load one of the handhelds. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning. The equipment which was left at the landing place was already infested with crabs, as you can see. Waiting for the boat to arrive. The boat was anchored during the night quite far away from the island, so it wouldn't catch the surf. And there she was. This was about 7 o'clock in the morning. The first skiffs were put back to the water again. And the real landing began. This was the longest day for us. This picture is taken about 10 o'clock in the morning. Then it was already close to 50 degrees centigrade. You see everybody is wearing trousers, not to burn the legs. First thing we did is carry the Zodiac over the corral. Look at the surf. Over the corral. The motor over the corral. And there you have a view on the lagoon, the inner side of the island. All the junk was moved bit by bit to the other side of the corral, to the side of the lagoon, because the campsite was about 3 kilometers away from the landing point. So we decided to transport all the equipment over the lagoon by boat. So basically it was during the whole day the same routine. The skiffs landed with equipment from the boat. They were carried ashore, carried over the corral, carried into the boat, into the lagoon. The boat transported the equipment over the lagoon to the campsite. At the campsite it was unloaded again, carried over the corral again, and then basically all the antennas and the towers were put up. That was one of the longest days because nobody could remember where the sun cream and the lipstick was. So everybody was kind of hurting and getting wet with sunburn. This is the boat in the lagoon. This is not the sea, but the lagoon. You see the other side of the island. Now probably you will not guess what this is all about. They had a problem to get one of the big towers, the crank-up tower. We had an 80-meter tower with us for the warp beam. But they couldn't carry it on the boat through the surf. So if you can't do it on the water, you do it underwater. So what they did is they tied the tower to buoys, and the crank-up tower was floated ashore, not carried ashore. There it is. After a long day, it was already hitting evening, as you can see. Finally, it was time for the guys who stayed during the whole day at the landing point, carrying the equipment over the corral. All of the equipment was moved, so Captain Mike came over to pick up the last bodies, as he called them, the expeditioners, to get them over the lagoon to the campsite. You see the campsite at the other end, the cocoa bush. This is where we put up the whole equipment and the tents. And the work didn't stop. It was evening, but the work didn't stop because we wanted to make QSOs. That was what the whole business was all about. This is one of the tri-benders being put up. Some circus tricks. The 5-element tri-bender. The vertical was placed in the lagoon. Maybe some of you remember the fine signals we had on 80 meters the first, one of the first nights. This was done with this small piece of antenna in the lagoon. It was really getting dark very fast. The closer you are to the equator, even the closer you are to the equator, the faster the sun rises, but also the faster the sun gets down. So in a minimum of time, it was dark. And even in the dark, we continued to work. This is the wire antenna on top of the crank-up tower, which is risen. In the dark, we put up the satellite antenna. Mike in 9NS, one of the operators, said one of my best memories of Clipperton is when Ali tried to assemble the 2 meter and a 70 centimeter antenna. While the crabs were taking his nuts and bolts and run away with the small pieces, or were eating his paper instruction set. Nevertheless, we were able to put the antenna together. Yeah, Ali? This is the next day. This is how the campsite looked like. So we had basically 4 tents, 2 shack tents and 2 sleeping tents. If you look well, you see the crab fence around the tent, so the crabs couldn't get in. On the left-hand side, we had the 5-element tri-bander on a 50-meter tower, a 3-element tri-bander on a 50-meter tower. Right-hand side, where the flags were, I agree the Belgian flag was a bit big. There was again a tri-bander. Behind the flags, there was a 6-meter antenna, the 6-element 6-meter antenna, the satellite antenna. Then in the lagoon there was a vertical, and close to the trees the 3-element for the wire bands. What you can't see on this picture is all the inverted V's and the snoopers which we used for the lower bands, for 40, 80 and 160. In the background you hear a bit of the recording we made while on the island, while operating.
Bravo radio.
You hear the satellite in the background, satellite radio. There you see the crab fence around to the camp. The tri-bander, they made one mistake while putting up the tri-bander. This tree you see on the left-hand side was too close to the tree. So what do you do in the American way? You don't move the antenna, but you move the tree. So what they did is they made a very ingenious winch system. And with the winch, they cranked the top of the tree further away from the antenna instead of moving the antenna. Seems to be a better idea, but I don't know. One thing was for sure, at least then we were able to turn the antenna. The vertical in the lagoon with birds all over. This is the satellite antenna. On the left, the long Yagi for 6 meters. The generators. This picture was taken on the first day, so you see all the mess was all around. In the cocoa bush, you see the wrecks of the old French camp. Most of the houses were gone. The only thing which was remaining intact, which you see on the upper right-hand corner of the picture, is the toilet. It's the only thing which remained from the camp. So it looked quite different than when you were there, Alan. One of the sleeping tents. This is what we call the European operating shack. In the back you have the satellite equipment, 6-meter equipment. On the right hand side, this was the spare station. At that moment Jay was operating RTTY. And the left-hand side was one of the stations I was mostly on during the nights. So if you worked me on 20 meters in the morning, in European morning, it was done from the left-hand side.
You can't only come to contest stations. All right, CQ contest, CQ contest. They're right on the news.
This is the American shack. On the behind, on the far left corner, is the workstation. Then where Mike, with the blue t-shirt, is working, one of the HF stations. Then the main station we had was using the, on the right-hand side where Pete is, was using the 3 kilowatt Dentron linear. That was the main station. Satellite station. The far left corner, the satellite radio. In the middle, the 6-meter equipment. And between the satellite radio and the 6-meter radio, you see a small black box. This was 1 kilowatt for 6 meter. And then the old rig where Iris hat is on is the 10-meter, is a spare 10-meter rig, which was used to monitor 28885, the 6-meter monitoring frequency. So this was basically Iris station. Nobody could touch it. Again, a view of the satellite 6-meter station. The tower of boxes, you see the metal boxes, are the bandpass filters we used. Every station was equipped with bandpass filters, so we could run on a simultaneous band at the same time without interfering one with each other. Even though we were running amplifiers, there was almost no interference at all. At given moments, we could even run CW and SSB on the same band. One evening we were running satellite and 6-meter at the same time. Jay, what he called his torture, RTTY. But 2 days he operated RTTY and then he was giving up. I'm little doubt, Peter, he said, give me a Morse key. Charlie?
Whiskey Lima 5-9.
Vincent?
Okay, who's the station running Whiskey Lima, please? Mexico, I believe it is. You're 5-9.
Pete?
Whiskey Foxtrot, tell me, go ahead.
So Ron in front and Mike, and then John in the far end operating the work bands. This is one of the surprises we had. John was normally not supposed to operate. He was a technician class, stateside. And he said, I'm only coming along just to make sure that everything, all the infrastructure and the generators are running. There's no problems with the food or whatever. And the second day he grabbed the microphone and he didn't let go of the microphone for the rest of the expedition. And if we worked this on the work bands, it was mostly this guy which worked the work bands. As you can see, we were running barefoot on the work bands.
Whiskey Alpha 3 Bravo Alpha Tango, you are 5-9. You are dead.
Jay and Pete. Ron, the oldest in the group.
QRZ Europe, 3792 and a half. 3792 and a half. QRZ Europe, please. Okay, is there any Europe, please? QRZ Europe.
See, we were a little bit burned.
Okay, QRZ Europe, please. QRZ Europe, 3792 and a half. 3792.
The air was so moist, so vochtig, so moist, that the first day I operated 10 meters. I operated 10 meters almost the whole day, about 9 or 10 hours. And my fingers were totally open. It was one wound just by riding, just because of the friction of the pencil against the fingers. Very funny.
QRZ number 1, 3800 and up, FO0CI. Any number 1, any number 1. Still on 1, George Washington, 5 minutes. Oh, yeah, and
We hear Ari saying miljoen krabben, but we also have billions of birds. That was a problem for us. In the morning, well rather in the evening, all the birds, well most of the birds where we were staying, landed on the trees or on the antennas. In the morning the same, they were getting all the trees, landed on everything which was high enough to land on. So what they did to keep the birds away from the antennas is from 6 o'clock in the morning on, they were shooting what they call whistle bullets. It's a special kind of bullet which makes a very hard, very loud whistling noise, which scared the birds away from the antennas. We succeeded, but I don't know, I can't count the number of times we had to bring the bloody rock band antenna down again to straighten one of the elements. The land strip of the island wasn't really wide. It was ranging from 4 meters to about 400 meters. We were probably on one of the widest strips. So on the right hand side you have the sea, on the left hand side you have the corral. There's not really much space. This is taken in the morning, so you see all of the birds on the ground. To serve. This is what we called our bathroom. In the morning there was not enough fresh water to wash ourselves, so we went in the sea. Took it to shave, to clean up a bit. I remember very well the first morning when Ari and I did our toilet. Both of us wear glasses, so we took off our glasses and went into the sea to clean up. And we saw a shade in the water coming close to us. We thought it was a big fish because there were fish, just tuna fish or small corral fish swimming all around. But we couldn't see it very well because we were without glasses. And only when the big fish was right in front of us, we could see what it was. A small shark. I can still remember Ari saying, "Sharks, run!" I've never seen a Dutchman run that fast. This is how we looked in the morning. There was not a lot of sleep, mostly for myself. I ran at night until about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And from 6 o'clock on, they started shooting to get the birds from the antennas. So it was about 2-3 hours of sleep, that's about it. So this is how we look like in the morning after the night's operation. The morning after, yeah. Some shots from fish. This is not a shark, but just one of the other bigger fish. It's funny, nature is not hostile. The fish just come swimming around you. You can almost touch them. Even it's the same for the birds. You can almost touch them. They're not hostile. The black spots you see is all fish. And the crabs. Thousands. Millions. What you see here is the crabs eating a paper plate. There's nothing on the plate, just the paper plate. And even for that they were fighting. So you can imagine that we were pretty lucky to keep those bunch of crabs out of the camp. One night they were getting in the camp because somebody left one of the ladders we used to put up the antennas close to the fence. So in the minimum of time the crabs crawled over the ladder into the fence and into the camp. So in the minimum of time we were infested by crabs. So everybody stopped operating and there was a big crab alarm. So we had to get the crabs out of our sleeping bags, out of the shack tents. They were eating the coax, eating whatever they could find. Plastic, paper, clothes, whatever. This was a remainder of the old French camp. You can still see remainders from Alain's expedition, some elements of the 20-meter Yagi. Actually, I tried to use one of the elements of 20 meter to make an inverted V of 160, believe it or not. An old diesel generator, probably from the army, I don't know. All over the island you had remainders of people who lived there. This is maybe a prize-winning picture from Ari, nature and the amateurs on Clipperton. Now this bird was about 10 meters high, no. This bird was about, I don't know, 15 centimeters high. It's a small booty chick. This is one of the chicks when we arrived on the island the first night. We put up a camp. Some of the smaller birds did not move from us, so we could put up the camp around them. And even when we left, the same booty birds were still in the same place as when we arrived. Very funny birds, very clumsy. You see, this is a small bird, but look at the feet. They were so clumsy, it was very, very funny to see them trying to get in the air. To get airborne, they had to run to gain some speed, and most of the time when they were running, they were falling over their own feet. They get up, try it again, fell over their own feet again, head over toe, and try it again. When they flew into the antenna, they fell to the ground and just got up again and flew off again. It was very funny. Even landing for those birds seemed to be something special. They landed on the ground, and to reduce the speed, they were like running very fast. Many of the times they were just falling over their own feet. It was very funny. It was almost like clowns, booties. As you can see, you can come very close to the birds. They're not hostile at all. This statue is to prove that the island is French property. It's a stone. As you can see on the foreground, République Française. Then the stone which is standing up is something like Bougainville, which is really the name of the cocoa bush. Bougainville. La capitale de Clipperton. Alain told me that there was a Hilton on Clipperton. I thought it was close to the statue, but I couldn't find a Hilton. I was really longing for a swim in cool fresh water then. One afternoon, Mike the captain took me over the lagoon to the rock. So this is really the other side of the island, Clipperton Rock. What's funny, because you used to the noise of the generators, so you don't hear them anymore, but what is funny is the moment you get away to the other side of the island, you miss something, the noise. You miss the noise of the generators, the noise of people operating. All of a sudden you're alone. Alone close to Clipperton Rock. Greetings from Clipperton Rock. Smell, yes. What? Smell? This is what the Americans call guano, which is a civilized word for bird shit. Some flags which were left by boats, you see, Légion étrangère, Compagnie de Travaux, and again crabs. During the day they stayed in the shade or underground. This is inside the rock. The rock is not solid, you can really go in the rock. And this is the what remains of the lighthouse. It was once, in the beginning of the century, a lighthouse put up by the Mexicans. This is what was left over from the lighthouse. It was not operational anymore. At that point it was very difficult to walk on the island. You don't have the impression, but if you walk on the island there, the corral is undermined by crabs. So if you walk each step you take, you sink in the corral for about 10-15 centimeters. So it was very difficult to walk on those spots. This is in the lagoon, the only vegetation really. On top of the lagoon, Sticking out of the water is marsh grass, morascas, marsh grass. You see birds, nothing birds. This is the remainder of a very old frigate, Frigate. This is the remainder of the American Army in the Second World War. This is a remainder of a crane. During the Second World War, the American Army tried to make a base on the Clipperton Island. This is what remains. They could not get on the island, but the difficulty was getting off. They tried to build a airplane landing strip, but that succeeded only half. A fork truck. And this is what you find in the middle of a deserted island, danger munitions. Again, the remainder of the American Army. Bomb shells. This is live ammunition. This is not dead ammunition. This is live ammunition, actually loaded. You could see when walking around in the between the ammunition that from time to time some parts exploded, so they were like craters in the sand. No, the crab don't eat it. No. I think it exploded actually because it was under the trees, and from time to time a coconut fell from the trees on the ammunition and caused some explosions. That was a theory anyway. By boat back to the camp. So you see the cocoa bush where we camped, and the camp itself. So on the left hand side you can see some of the antennas and the tents. Now the main thing while on the island was, of course, operating. We had up to 7 stations running simultaneously. And the deal with the crew was that they would help us land and provide us with food and drinks and fuel while we were on the island. So we didn't have to bother or have one operator dedicated for preparing food. So in the morning and in the evening, so twice a day, the crew landed through the surf each time over the lagoon to carry fresh food, warm food actually, prepared on the boat, drinks and cooling ice. So what you see in the green, what is in the green box is drinks and cooling ice. And in the waste bin, the guy on the left, Biff, is carrying his food. By the way, you see the crab fence in front. Each time they landed, the operations were almost stopped for a few minutes because everybody attacked the food. Barbecue again. Now this is a special story. This is Mike, the captain. One evening, as usual, they brought the food and the drinks and the cooling ice and the fuel for the generators. And as usual, we waved them goodbye. He said the sea was pretty rough. But nobody paid attention really because that was his problem, not our problem, to get back on the boat. And one evening he could not. As you see at night, it was about, 8, 9 o'clock in the evening, pitch dark. We saw 2 silhouettes coming back to the camp. And what actually has happened is while they were trying to get off the island, the skiff turned over in the surf. One of the crew members was thrown overboard into the corral, into the sea, in between the sharks. And as I told you, there was always a lifeboat circling outside of the corral. If something would go wrong, he could intervene. So that guy was taken by the by the lifeboat and dragged back to the Spirit. The captain and another crew member jumped off the skiff which had turned over and had to swim ashore and walk back on foot to the island, to the camp. So all of a sudden, surprised, there was Mike and Biff, wet, kind of a bit ashamed that this time they were not succeeding to getting off the island, and asking, is there any room to sleep here? That was that night. You could see, you could still smile. The next day, they could get off the island, but they couldn't get on the island anymore. There was the sea was too rough. There was a storm, and we did not know how long the storm would stay terrorizing the island. Fortunately for us, it was only for a day, but that day we were without food, so we had some emergency food like cornflakes and cookies and some water. But I don't think we would be very pleased if the storm would have terrorized the island for a very long period, because at a certain point we would run out of food and drinks. But anyway, the day after, they could land on the island again. This picture is taken the very last day, when we were already trying to dismantle the stations. We got 6 o'clock in the morning, we got a call from the boat, from the captain, saying, excuse me, do you know where the, how do you call this, the license to operate is? Do you know where your landing permission is? We said, why? Well, he said, I got the French naval marine in a big boat, in a big destroyer, close to my boat, and they're coming on board to inspect us. As you know, that Clipperton is surrounded, the water around Clipperton is French territorial waters. Normally you cannot get in those territorial waters without landing permissions. So they were pretty curious. There was a boat there in their territorial waters, so they were coming over to inspect us. This is the destroyer. You see this, sir? This was the day we were planning to get off the island. And they were coming also on the island to inspect us. Now nobody really paid attention because everybody was busy breaking down the camp. There were still 2 stations running. I remember very well, I was working close to the lagoon to put all the equipment in the lagoon, or close to the lagoon, so it could be picked up by the boats. And I turned over. There was this guy with his machine gun in his hand, smiling to me and kissing me hello in the French way. It was quite a surprise, I should say. Yeah, you have to excuse me, but my lips were pretty burned. So, and the guy I was talking to was the doctor in the team, the French Navy doctor. So you can see he was like looking very suspicious to my lips. You sure you're okay? In the beginning they were a bit hostile. They wanted to know what we were doing there. They were asking us when we came on the island, what we saw. The papers, the radio amateur license, the landing permit had to be shown, but in a while they turned friendly. Actually, we ended up by showing them how the radio worked. And we made one contact with France, their homeland, over the radio, especially for them. When they left, they gave us some bottles of French wine. And the way they are. Now the funny story is, although they are Marines, they had quite some trouble to get on the island. Maybe you saw in the previous pictures that those guys were wet. Not wet from sweat, but wet from the sea. They had quite some trouble to get on the island. Although we were running skiffs to the Spirit and back to the island full time, offloading the equipment, I guess they couldn't do such a good job as the Americans were doing. Actually, the French Navy couldn't get on the island anymore because one of the outboard motors broke down. So it was really very funny that the crew of the Spirit of Adventure had to help the French Navy getting off their own island. Very funny. So time to say goodbye to the island, at least to the campsite. The group picture. Breaking down tents. Assembling garbage. We didn't leave any garbage on the island. We left our call signs for Alpha India 6 Victor from the 1985 expedition, if I remember well. Left his call sign. And we had our plaque to remember this expedition. Fixing the plaque. If all goes well, this is still the way our plaque looks on Clipperton Island. So the whole day, that day, we were offloading equipment into the boats, to the skiffs in the lagoon. They were carrying over the water the equipment to the landing spot. Everything was carried over the corral again and put in the boats in the skiffs to be carried over water to the Spirit. This is Ali saying goodbye from his campsite. Once the campsite was cleaned up, we all moved to the landing spot. Now again, this was a long day. Remember, we woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning by Captain Mike over the radio telling us the French Navy arrived. The French Navy arrived. We broke down the camp, transported all of the equipment to the landing place. When finally all the equipment was there, they had to stop the transport to the Spirit, which was waiting, as you can see, because it was low tide. There was no way anymore, although the surf was low, there was no way anymore to get the skiffs on land because the tide was too low. So there we were sitting on the beach, on Clipperton Beach, waiting for the tide to turn. And that was very warm. As you can see, the corral and the sand is very wide. And it was at least 50 degrees centigrade there. It was very, very hot. I mean, the only thing we had to do was wait. And wait. To comfort us a bit, I don't know if it was humor, American humor or what, the American crew landed a big pot of spaghetti. So we could eat some spaghetti while we were waiting for the tide to turn. So imagine yourself on the beach, Clipperton Beach, in the plain sun. You see there's almost no trees. In the plain sun with a beer in one hand and a paper platter with spaghetti in another hand. One of the funny details there was that we had been working the whole day. There was no soda anymore, no cola or Sprite anymore. And we had to keep on drinking, not to dry out. But the only thing which was left was beer. So we were drinking beer the whole time, not to dry out while working and transporting the equipment. So everybody was kind of tipsy. So there we were, you were on Clipperton Beach eating spaghetti and being tipsy. It was very funny. Very funny atmosphere. That you had to feel. There you had to be. In the evening, when the tide turned, everything was transported back to the boat, and Mike, the captain, had a nice surprise. The evening before, he catch some lobsters, and prepared our evening meal, steak with lobster. Now, he could see on the weather facts that there was a storm hitting the island. Actually, we had to get off the island almost a day before we planned. And he said, the storm is going to hit us, so you better have your stomach full with food, with the lobster and steak, because it's going to be a very rough night. And it was a very rough night. I remember very well. Yeah, the lobster's back to sea.
Yeah.
3 days later, it was a very, very rough ride back. Almost everybody was seasick. Everybody, whether you had to take seasickness pills or you had patches behind your ears, You see, it was actually so rough the first night that the crew of the boat, which was sleeping on the top floor of the boat, almost all of them fell out of their beds because the rocking and rolling of the boat. And again, everybody was sick. It was not a pleasant trip. Most of us did nothing but sleep and eat or try to eat and try to sleep again, trying to keep the food down, not to think too much about the wild sea. 3 days later, we arrived at the south of Baja in Mexico. Mike said that the ride back home to San Diego would take another 3 days, so beforehand, we decided to land at south of Baja on a harbor which is called San Luca, Cabo San Luca. This is taken in the harbor of Cabo San Luca with the crew of the ship. So the 8 people with the cook, Kelly the cook. So on the left you had Mike Lemonhead, then Kelly the cook, then Richard, the technician. What was his name again? Brian. Yes, Brian the technician. Big Bill, the Captain Mike, then Lee Washington. He was actually the guy who almost drowned in the evening accident they had. And yes, Biff. It's even hard to remember the names. So. Cabo San Luca harbor. Cabo San Luca seen from the airplane. We took the plane there. Actually, the company we flew was Air Alaska. Air Alaska from the heat of Mexico back to Los Angeles. Very funny. In Los Angeles airport, tired. Ron saying, no, you can't pictures here. Can't take pictures here. He said, Ron, we're Europeans, we do whatever you want. Some of us left the same evening. Vincent went back, flew back to England. Mike stayed at the airport, flew back to Indianapolis. We did 7 other crew members in this car with 7 people with the bags. We drove back through the Los Angeles traffic jam to Jay's house. It was a very funny ride. And at Charlie's home in 7QQ, the mail was already waiting. There were about, 4 or 5 boxes of mail already waiting. Charlie's wife spent almost the whole day trying to find their personal mail in between the QSL cards. Trying to find the first Belgian QSL card. Actually, the first one I found was the one from Danny, went 4VT. So Danny, your card arrived at Charlie's, okay? Okay. I don't know when you will get your card, but anyway, we received it. Then 2 days later, Bolfari and I flew back to Europe, arriving in Zaventem. This is what the people saw. This is what I saw. A welcome committee, who could have believed it? A welcome committee with banners and everything was almost like a hero. You couldn't even think that each of those guys paid 1,000 francs to get a QSL from Clipperton. It's a joke, it's a joke, it's a joke. Quite a sentimental period then. Felt good to have a welcome committee. I didn't expect it at all. At last, the very first Belgian beer. I was tired of Budweiser and Light and whatever. Finally, even it was Stella. It was the first Belgian beer again. The guys who formed the welcome committee, still scratching while moving the equipment on Clipperton. I had to work a lot in the lagoon, and there's water lines, waterlezen, in the lagoon, so that was still a souvenir from Clipperton. And of course, pieces of skin coming off. I had to show I was from Clipperton anyway. Thanks again for helping me prepare for the expedition. We spent a weekend going over all the pictures and the videos he took, so we were able to prepare. So I could still have a chance to say, no, I'm not going. But still we went. So thanks again, Anna, for all the information. Then the numerous people who helped us on the island QSP, doing QSPs to the home front. Too many to tell, of course. My one and only friend, Mark, going for WW each time. Every scan he was there, trying to QSP to Tina and getting the messages across. Also the people who helped to prepare, Claude and His and John who went for UN, bringing some pieces of equipment to get the bloody 160 meter antenna up and running. And also the people, again, very especially from the bottom of my heart, the people from the welcome committee on Zaventem. That was a very special surprise. But we'll always carry that memory together with the Clipperton memory. Thank you very much.
Bravo Peter, bedankt voor deze mooie uitleg. En ik zou zeggen tot de volgende keer. Hopelijk nog een keer, mag nog een keer gaan, waarom niet? Een keer naar een ander spot, hè. Dat is heel interessant. Hè? Ik ben dus